My name is Maya, and I'm 24 years old. For the past 12 years, I thought my grandpa left me nothing when he died. My parents told me he spent everything on medical bills before he passed away. I believed them because why wouldn't I? They were my parents. They raised me. They fed me. But looking back now, I should have noticed the signs earlier. Like how mom suddenly got a new car 2 months after grandpa died. Or how dad renovated the entire basement into his dream workshop. Or how they both took that expensive trip to Europe when I was 14. They said dad got a bonus at work. I never questioned it. I was just a kid trying to survive middle school. Grandpa and I were close. Really close. He used to take me fishing every Sunday morning before he got sick. He taught me how to tie knots and told me stories about his time in the Navy. He always said I reminded him of his late wife when she was young. The last time I saw him in the hospital, he squeezed my hand and whispered something I didn't understand back then. Maya, I made sure you'll be okay, Grandpa had said that day in the hospital. His voice was weak and raspy, but his eyes were clear. I was only 12, and I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was just being sentimental because he was dying. 3 days later, he was gone. The funeral was small, just family and a few of his Navy buddies. I cried the whole time. Mom kept patting my back, telling me to be strong. Dad stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable, like he always did at emotional events. After the funeral, life went back to normal pretty quickly. Too quickly, now that I think about it. Nobody talked about Grandpa's will or his belongings. I assumed he didn't have much. My parents never brought it up, and I was too sad to ask questions. I focused on school and tried to remember the good times with Grandpa instead of thinking about losing him. Years passed, and the memory of that hospital visit faded into the background of my life. Growing up after Grandpa died was harder than I expected. Not just because I missed him, but because money was always tight. At least, that's what my parents always told me. "We can't afford that, Maya," became Mom's favorite phrase. New shoes for volleyball? Too expensive. School trip to Washington, D.C.? Not in the budget. A laptop for homework? Use the library computers. I worked part-time at a coffee shop all through high school just to have spending money. I saved every dollar I could because I knew college would be expensive. My parents made it clear they couldn't help me pay for it. "You'll need to get scholarships or take out loans," Dad said when I was 16. I worked my tail off. Good grades, sports, volunteering. I got a partial scholarship to State University, but it wasn't enough. I took out student loans for the rest. $30,000 in debt before I even graduated. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad seemed to be doing fine. Not rich, but comfortable. New furniture here, a kitchen remodel there. I never connected the dots. College was rough. I was studying business administration while working 25 hours a week at a campus bookstore. My roommate's parents paid for everything, and she spent her time partying while I spent mine studying and working. I barely had time to sleep. Some nights I survived on ramen noodles and coffee. I called home once a week, and my parents always asked how I was managing. "It's hard, but I'm making it work," I'd tell them. Mom would sigh and say, "I wish we could help more, sweetie." Dad would add, "Character building, Maya. You'll be stronger for it." I graduated last year with decent grades despite everything. I was proud of myself. I'd done it all on my own, or so I thought. I moved back home temporarily while I looked for a job in my field. The plan was to save money for a few months, then get my own place. Living with my parents again at 23 felt like going backward, but I didn't have a choice. The job market was tough, and I was broke. 3 months ago, everything changed. I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, scrolling through job listings on my laptop, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because it was probably a spam call, but something made me pick up. "Hello, is this Maya Thompson?" A woman's voice asked. "Yes, that's me," I said. "This is Patricia Chen from Chen and Associates Law Firm. I'm calling about the estate of Richard Thompson." My heart skipped. Richard Thompson was my grandpa. "I'm sorry, what?" I said, sitting up straight. "Your grandfather's estate. There are some matters that need your attention. Could you come to our office this week?" I was confused. Grandpa died 12 years ago. Why would a lawyer be calling me now? "I think there might be a mistake," I said. "My grandfather passed away a long time ago." Everything was already settled. There was a pause. "Miss Thompson, I think you should come in. There are some things you need to know." Are you available tomorrow at 2? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing with questions. What could a lawyer possibly want after 12 years? I didn't tell my parents about the call. Something in my gut told me to keep it to myself. The next day, I told Mom I had a job interview and drove to the address Patricia Chen had given me. The law office was in a nice part of town, in a building with marble floors and expensive-looking art on the walls. Patricia Chen was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a professional handshake. She led me to her office and closed the door. Miss Thompson, thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a chair. I'm going to be direct with you. Do you know anything about your grandfather's will? No, I admitted. My parents told me he didn't leave anything. Medical bills took everything. Patricia's expression changed. She looked almost angry. That's not true, she said simply. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She opened a file on her desk and pulled out several documents. Your grandfather left you a substantial inheritance, Patricia said, sliding papers across her desk. $250,000 to be held in trust until your 25th birthday. Additionally, he left you his house, which has been in a trust and maintained by this firm. My hands started shaking. I couldn't process what she was saying. $250,000? A house? There must be some mistake, I stammered. I'm only 24. Why are you telling me now if I can't access it until I'm 25? Patricia leaned forward. Because 6 months ago, someone tried to claim the inheritance early. They presented documents stating you had died in a car accident. Obviously fraudulent, but it raised red flags. We've been trying to locate you ever since. The room started spinning. Who tried to claim it? I asked, but I already knew. Patricia's face was grim. Your parents, Robert and Linda Thompson. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own parents had tried to fake my death to steal my inheritance. I sat there in shock, staring at Patricia. They told me there was nothing, I whispered. They let me struggle through college, take out loans, work myself to exhaustion, and the whole time there was $250,000 waiting for me. Patricia nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Maya. According to our records, your parents were informed of the inheritance 12 years ago. They were supposed to tell you when you turned 18, but they never did. We sent letters to your home address every year on your birthday, starting at age 18. Did you never receive them? I shook my head. I never saw any letters. They likely intercepted them, Patricia said. When you didn't respond or come forward, we assumed you knew and were waiting until 25, as your grandfather specified. We had no reason to suspect fraud until the death claim. Can they go to jail for this? I asked. Patricia sighed. Possibly. Fraud, forgery, theft. But that's up to you. You're the victim here. You decide what happens next. I left the law office in a daze. My whole life had been a lie. Every time my parents said we couldn't afford something, they were lying. Every time I struggled and they watched without helping, they knew there was money sitting there. Money that was meant for me. Money from a grandfather who loved me and wanted to make sure I'd be okay. I sat in my car for an hour, just thinking. Part of me wanted to march home and confront them immediately. But another part of me, the part that had learned to be strategic from years of making every dollar count, told me to slow down. If I confronted them now, they'd just make excuses or deny everything. I needed proof. I needed to be smart about this. Patricia had given me copies of all the documents. The original will, the trust agreement, the letters they'd sent to my home address, and the fraudulent death certificate my parents had submitted. Everything was there in black and white. That night at dinner, I watched my parents carefully. Mom served meatloaf and mashed potatoes like it was any other Tuesday. Dad talked about some problem at work. They asked about my job search with concerned faces, like they actually cared about my financial struggles. Any luck today, honey? Mom asked. Not yet. I lied, but I'm hopeful. You'll find something soon, Dad said. Just keep at it. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to throw the documents on the table and watch their faces fall, but I kept my cool. Actually, I have a lead on something, I said casually. Might need to move out soon if it works out. Mom's face tightened just slightly. That's wonderful, sweetie. But don't rush. You know you can stay here as long as you need. Thanks, Mom, I said, swallowing my anger. That night, I made a plan. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make them reveal themselves. I was going to give them one more chance to come clean. And when they didn't, everyone would know what they'd done. The next morning, I started setting my trap. First, I called Patricia and asked her to send another official letter about the inheritance, but this time to a P.O. box I rented. I needed to make sure my parents couldn't intercept it. Then I did something clever. I created a fake email account and sent my parents a message pretending to be from the law firm. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, it read. This is a courtesy notice that Maya Thompson's inheritance will be released early due to administrative review. Please contact our office immediately. I wanted to see what they'd do. Would they panic? Would they finally tell me the truth? I checked the sent folder obsessively, waiting for a response. 2 hours later, I heard my mom on the phone downstairs. Her voice was stressed and urgent. I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. I don't understand, she was saying. We were told 25. Why would it be released early? Can't you delay it? My blood boiled. She wasn't calling to tell me about the money. She was trying to stop me from getting it. Over the next week, I watched my parents scramble. They didn't know I was onto them, so they weren't being careful. Dad took several long phone calls in the garage. Mom seemed anxious and distracted. I pretended everything was normal. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. I set up a small camera in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf, not to spy on them generally, just to catch them if they talked about the inheritance. It felt wrong, but so did what they'd done to me. 3 days later, I got what I needed. I was supposedly out at a job interview, but I'd actually just driven around the block and parked down the street. I watched the footage later on my laptop. Mom and Dad were sitting on the couch, looking stressed. We need to tell her, Dad said. My heart jumped, finally. But then Mom shook her head. Absolutely not. Once she knows, we lose everything. The house, the money, all of it. Linda, she's going to find out eventually, Dad argued. Then we'll deal with it then. Maybe we can convince her we were planning to tell her all along. I felt sick watching them. These were the people who raised me, the people I trusted more than anyone in the world, and they were actively plotting to keep my inheritance from me. Mom continued, we've already spent so much of it anyway. The renovations, the cars, the trips. If she finds out, she'll want it back. She might even sue us. We should have never touched it, Dad muttered. It's too late for should-haves, Mom snapped. We need to stick together on this. If she somehow finds out, we act surprised. We say the lawyers never told us. We play dumb. Dad nodded reluctantly. And if that doesn't work, then we tell her the money went to her upbringing. Food, clothes, housing. She owes us anyway. I stopped the video. I'd heard enough. They weren't sorry. They weren't planning to come clean. They were planning to gaslight me if I found out. My mom had actually suggested that I owed them my own inheritance. The anger I felt was different from anything I'd experienced before. It was cold and calculating. I spent the next 2 days planning my revenge carefully. I wasn't going to just confront them privately. They'd lie and manipulate their way out of it. I needed witnesses. I needed consequences. First, I called Patricia and told her I wanted to press charges for fraud. She connected me with a prosecutor who was very interested in the case. This is serious, the prosecutor told me. Attempted fraud, forgery of a death certificate, and financial exploitation. We can definitely pursue this. How long until you can move forward? I asked. Give me 1 week to build the case properly. Can you wait that long? I could wait. I'd waited 12 years already. Next, I reached out to my mom's sister, Aunt Carol. She'd always been kind to me, and I knew she and my mom had a complicated relationship. I called her and asked if I could come visit. Of course. Maya, is everything okay? I need to talk to you about something important, I said. It's about Grandpa's will. There was silence. I'll put on coffee, she finally said. Aunt Carol lived an hour away in a small house filled with pictures of our family. When I arrived, she looked worried. I told her everything. The inheritance, the lies, the fake death certificate, all of it. She listened with her hand over her mouth, shaking her head. When I finished, she looked both angry and sad. I knew something was off, she said quietly. After your grandpa died, Linda suddenly had money for things. She said Robert got promoted, but I had my doubts. I never imagined this though. Did Grandpa ever mention the inheritance to you? I asked. Carol nodded. He told me he was leaving you money and the house. He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of, because he knew money was tight for your parents. He made me promise not to tell Linda, because he wanted it to be a surprise for you when you were older. He was so proud of you, Maya. Tears welled up in my eyes. He tried to help me, and they stole it. What are you going to do? Carol asked. I'm going to expose them, I said, but I need your help. Carol leaned forward. Whatever you need. I explained my plan. In 3 days, there was a big family gathering planned at my parents' house. It was my cousin's birthday, and about 20 relatives would be there. I wanted to confront my parents in front of everyone. Are you sure? Carol asked. That's going to be brutal. They deserve it, I said firmly. They let me struggle for 12 years. They watched me work myself to death in college while sitting on my money. They tried to fake my death. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about them facing what they've done. Carol agreed to help. She would make sure she brought her husband and kids, and she'd position herself near my parents when I made my move. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal while living with the 2 people who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. I smiled at breakfast. I helped Mom in the kitchen. I let Dad quiz me about job interviews, all while knowing what was coming. The day of the gathering arrived. My parents were busy preparing food and decorating. Mom was in a good mood, humming as she arranged flowers. Dad was setting up tables in the backyard. I helped carry things and tried to keep my hands from shaking. Relatives started arriving around noon. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone was happy and laughing. My little cousin Emily ran around with a birthday hat on her head. It almost made me reconsider. Almost. But then I remembered the video of my parents plotting to lie to me. I remembered every ramen noodle dinner in college. Every time I'd stressed about money while they took vacations. I pulled out my phone and texted Carol. Are you ready? She texted back immediately. Ready, we're here. I walked outside where everyone was gathered. My mom was serving cake. Dad was telling some story that had people laughing. I took a deep breath and pulled out the documents Patricia had given me. Hey everyone, I said loudly. Can I have your attention for a minute? I have an announcement. The yard got quiet. Everyone turned to look at me. My mom smiled, probably thinking I was going to announce a job or something. I recently found out something interesting, I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. 12 years ago, when Grandpa died, he left me an inheritance. $250,000 and his house. Confused faces stared at me. My mom's smile froze. Maya, what are you talking about? She said, laughing nervously. I'm talking about the money you and Dad hid from me for 12 years, I said, looking directly at her. The money that was supposed to help me through college. The money you spent on yourselves while I worked 2 jobs and took out loans. The yard was completely silent now. My dad stood up, his face red. This is not the time or place for this, he said firmly. No, Dad. This is exactly the time and place, I said. I held up the documents. I have proof. The will, the trust documents, and the letters the lawyers sent that you intercepted. My uncle stepped forward. Robert, is this true? Dad's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Mom, who had gone pale. It's complicated, Mom finally said. Is it? I asked. Because it seems pretty simple to me. Grandpa left me money. You were supposed to tell me. You didn't. Instead, you spent it and lied to my face for 12 years. My cousin Sarah gasped. That's awful. It gets worse, I continued, my voice rising. 6 months ago, when I was about to turn 25 and gain access to the inheritance, they tried to claim I died in a car accident, so they could take the rest of the money. Shocked voices erupted around the yard. My aunt actually said a curse word. Carol stepped forward next to me, putting her hand on my shoulder. I've seen the documents, she confirmed. It's all true. They forged a death certificate. Mom started crying. Maya, please, let's talk about this privately. Why? I demanded. So you can lie to me some more? Tell me how you were going to tell me eventually? How you were protecting me? Dad tried a different approach. We raised you. We fed you, housed you, clothed you. That money went toward your upbringing. Liar, I said, and my voice cracked. Grandpa died when I was 12. You had that money for 12 years. If you used it for my upbringing, why did I have to work in high school? Why did I take out student loans? Why did you let me struggle while you renovated the house and took vacations? I pulled out my phone and played the video I'd recorded. My parents' voices filled the yard. Once she knows, we lose everything. We act surprised. We play dumb. She owes us anyway. Mom sank into a chair. Dad just stood there, defeated. My relatives were staring at my parents like they were strangers. You watched her struggle, Carol said to her sister, her voice shaking with anger. Your own daughter. And you did nothing. We were going to tell her, Mom whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. When? I demanded. When were you going to tell me? Never. You were caught. If the lawyers hadn't called me, I would never have known. My uncle walked over to my dad. I don't even know what to say to you, Robert. This is beyond wrong. Other relatives chimed in. My grandmother, my dad's mom, looked devastated. How could you do this to your own child? Aunt Carol's husband asked. My parents had no answers. They just sat there while everyone expressed their shock and disgust. Some relatives hugged me. Others just shook their heads at my parents. The birthday party was obviously over. People started leaving, but not before making it clear to my parents what they thought of them. You're not welcome at my house anymore, one uncle said. Don't call me, Carol told my mom. I stood there watching them face the consequences of their actions. It should have felt better than it did. After everyone left, it was just me and my parents in the backyard. The decorations look sad now, birthday streamers hanging limp in the afternoon sun. I called the police already, I said quietly. And the prosecutor. They'll be here soon. Mom started sobbing harder. Dad just nodded, like he'd expected it. Why? I asked them. That's all I want to know. Why would you do this to me? Dad finally spoke. It started small. We borrowed a little for the car, planning to pay it back. Then the house needed work. We told ourselves it was all going to you eventually anyway, since you'd inherit the house. It just snowballed. You could have stopped at any time, I said. You could have told me the truth. Mom looked up at me with red eyes. I was ashamed. The longer we waited, the harder it got to tell you. And then you were doing fine without it. You were managing. We convinced ourselves you didn't need it. I needed it, I said, my voice breaking. I needed it every single day. Do you know what it's like to live on ramen for weeks because you can't afford anything else? To fall asleep in the library because you're working so many hours you don't have time to rest? I needed that money. And more than that, I needed parents who would have given it to me. We're sorry, Dad said. Sorry you got caught, I corrected. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers took statements from me and my parents separately. I showed them all the documents. The prosecutor had already filled them in on the case. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud and attempted theft, one officer said. They put handcuffs on my parents right there in our backyard. Mom was still crying. Dad looked hollow. As they were led away, Mom turned to me. Maya, please. We're your parents. It's been 3 months since everything came out. I haven't spoken to my parents since that day. They've tried to call and email, but I'm not ready. Maybe someday I will be, but not now. The whole family knows what happened. Some people think I was too harsh having them arrested. Most people support what I did. Honestly, I don't care what they think. I did what I needed to do. I go fishing every Sunday morning now, just like I used to with Grandpa. I sit by the lake with his old rod and think about everything that's happened. Sometimes I talk to him out loud, telling him about my life and thanking him for trying to take care of me. Last week, I caught a huge bass. Grandpa would have loved it. The whole experience taught me something important. Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, and love. My parents had my blood, but not my loyalty. They broke my trust, and their love came with conditions. But people like Carol and the other relatives who stood by me, that's real family. I'm building a new life now, one based on truth instead of lies. And every time I walk into my house or check my bank account, I remember that Grandpa kept his promise. He made sure I'd be okay. Even from beyond the grave, he protected me better than my own parents ever did. That phone call from Patricia Chen changed everything. It exposed the truth, brought justice, and gave me back the future my grandfather intended for me. My parents thought they could hide their betrayal forever. They were wrong. And now everyone knows exactly who they really are.